I'm Margo,
And I'm Sheryl.
and we are real estate agents in the Crossville, Tennessee area. And today we're talking about buying land.
So I'm asked a lot by people who haven't found the perfect home, and they want a couple of acres. They want to be out of a subdivision and they just want to build. So how much it's going to cost them, what do they have to think about? So let's go through some of those things.
Well, I think it's really important. If you're thinking about buying land, you need to do some research. Where you want to live. Do you want to live close to a city? You want to live in the middle of nowhere? Zoning and deed restrictions are important to know about.
In Cumberland County, we have no zoning. So you can essentially, other than deed restrictions, you can build pretty much anywhere because there's no commercial or residential zoning. But the deed restrictions play a big part because people call and they want a couple of acres of unrestricted land. Well, when you're looking at small tracts of land, almost all of it is going to have some sort of deeded restrictions with it. People don't just chop up a big piece of land into half-acre lots and not put restrictions on it. It just is almost impossible. And that's one of the big misconceptions, I think, is that someone thinks they can buy half an acre and put a tiny home or live in a camper trailer.
Yeah.
And
Live off the land.
yeah, and the restrictions just are not going to allow that. I can't think of anywhere where you can buy half an acre that's unrestricted. Can you?
No.
So if you want unrestricted, you're going to be buying larger amounts of land, which then pushes, and I guess this is also a misconception, is the price per acre varies based on the size of the acreage. So if you're buying 100 acres, the price per acre is going to be a lot less than if you're buying half an acre, right?
Correct. If you're buying, like recently, 280 acres sold for $5,500 an acre.
And so people want to look at that and say, well, I should be able to buy half an acre for $2,700.
Yeah, and that's not the case.
Not
From summertime this summer, it's about $9,000 an acre minimum.
But the smaller the lot size, the higher the price, because it's not uncommon at all to see half an acre lots selling for $30,000. And that, I think, is where a lot of people miscalculate when they're working on their budget to try to buy land.
But I see acres, quarter acres in Fairfield, Glade, or Tansy for $1,000.
Well, that's another myth that we have, is that I can buy a $1,000 lot in Fairfield Glade and build on it. And one thing that people should know is that in Fairfield Glade and Tansy, there are roads that are drawn on a map that don't exist.
They're not there.
So even my GPS, some days I'll be driving and my GPS will try to turn me onto a road that doesn't exist. So these subdivisions were platted, or these developments were platted 50 years ago, and they intended to build all of these roads at some point, and they may at some point. But there are lots of lots out there that don't have a road and don't have utilities. And so they're just membership lots, and people don't understand that they can't even get to those lots. There's no access to them. So, and that's another thing about buying land, is that you have to have access and you have to have utilities. And there are places where, you may be building a road that's going to be a mile long that you're responsible for building and maintaining.
That's expensive.
And that's expensive, and you may be running utilities for a long way.
Doing some research, just if there's not electricity, say you buy an acre or two, and there's not a telephone pole with electricity close by, it's like from $5 to $25 a foot to get electric to that site.
So Volunteer Electric, which is our local energy provider, will run electricity 750 feet through the air as long as you have a cleared right-of-way for them to run it over. But clearing trees is expensive. So even though they will run the lines for free, you have to give them access so that you don't have trees that are up into the lines.
Yeah, there's a lot to buying land.
And that's not totally unattainable. You just have to budget for that. No, I showed some land the other day that sat probably 1,500 feet from the main road. So they were going to have to build a driveway and run electricity and water or drill a well back to the property. And so the land was a fairly good value. But when you start factoring in all of the other things they have to do, then it becomes much more expensive than people think.
So what would you say drilling a well? Let's say there's no city water. We call it city water here when it's a public water.
Mhm.
Which we do have. Almost all of Cumberland County has public's water.
If there's road access.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing is like if you're going way, way, way far off the main road, then you probably aren't going to have public water there. So drilling a well,
Drilling a well, cost to drill a well.
my guess is roughly $10,000. Have you researched that?
I got a quote yesterday. If it's a normal, less than 300 feet well, between $15,000 and $25,000. And I asked, well, what's the difference? Well, there's difference in soils. How much rock is there?
How deep?
How deep?
Yeah.
So
$15,000 to $25,000 for a well.
and that includes everything, the pressure tank and everything. So you'd be ready to go. But that's, I buy some land for $30,000 and then it's going to cost me another $25,000 to have water.
To have water. Yeah.
Well, what about electricity? What about internet? What about sewer?
Okay, so that's another big one is we don't have public sewer in most of the county. We have public sewer in the city limits and a lot of Fairfield Glade. But if you're buying outside of those areas, just out in the rural part of the county, you have to have a septic system. Well, then you have to make sure that you can put a septic system on this land because we have a lot of rock here. So the land has to be soil tested and you have to apply for a septic permit, which needs to be done before you buy the land because you don't want to buy land and then realize you can't build on it because you can't put a septic system on it. And doing all of that and installing the septic system is going to be another $10,000 to $15,000, depending on, it could be more than that if you have to have a pump system of some sort, but I'd say minimum probably $10,000 for a septic system, right?
Yeah.
If that's
It's
even doable.
easy. There's no trees. There's soil.
Right. And that's the other thing about buying the small lots, like in Lake Tansy, those lots are very small. And a lot of times you can't fit a house and a septic system. Even if the lot has good soil, you can't fit a house and a septic system on those lots. So you may find a great deal on a lot out there, $4,000 for a lot, but you may not be able to fit everything you want on it. So a lot of people out there are having to find adjacent lots.
Yeah, at least two lots.
Two.
And just from past experience, you'll see the lots, they're like $4,000 or $3,000, but you can't build on that one lot and you're going to end up spending average around 10 on the low side to 15 to get a kind of a plane
decent-
in the woods.
Waterfront lots are almost non-existent. They've all been built on. If they're buildable, they've been built on pretty much, would you say?
There's a few.
There's a few.
But the price tag on those, I looked this up yesterday. Fairfield Glade and Tansy Lake lot average that sold this summer, $300,000 an acre. So they're usually half-acre lots. So
Yeah.
you're paying $150,000 just for the
Just
place
a lot.
to put the house.
That's if there is a lot available. Most of those lots are built on.
Yeah, there's very few left.
And those lots are usually very steep and are going to take a lot of excavating to even build on them.
yeah, they're, the cream of the crop lots have been built on a long time
Years ago.
Yeah.
Which brings us to another point about how buildable is your lot. So we've talked about utilities and access and septic, but what kind of house do you plan to build and can that be put on your lot? So that's something that real estate agents really can't help a lot with. That's where you need to get with your contractor and bring your contractor over to the lot and say, can I build the house I want to build on this lot? How much clearing is it going to take? Am I going to have to bring in fill? Do I need to remove a lot of trees? How rocky is it? Is it really feasible for me to build a house on the lot that I would like to build a house on? Because that's not our profession. We don't do the excavating and the
We're not experts in that.
right. And so we can help guide you in the right direction, but ultimately some of the decision is going to fall on the buyer and their contractor to decide if they can do what they want to do on this lot. So it's important that they start working with someone before they go buy a lot and then realize they can't.
Yeah, and then figure out afterwards you bought a lot you can't build on.
Well, you can't build what you want to build on it.
Or at a affordable price point.
Right, right. Good contractors can help a lot with giving the estimates for the driveway, the utilities, the clearing, where, we work with that a little bit, but that's not our area of expertise.
Mm-hmm. Well, and when you're looking I'm a buyer and I'm looking on the internet for land, it doesn't really say, it says restrictions, yes or no, but what does that mean?
So what are the typical restrictions?
No chickens, no poultry. That's a big one I see all the time. No commercial chicken farms or swine farms. I see that often.
And another one is size restrictions. So a lot of the subdivisions are going to have a minimum amount of square footage.
Yeah. Even if it's 5 acres,
right.
in Cumberland Cove.
Right.
They have a lot of restrictions.
So you can't just go build a tiny home on a lot of these properties. So in order to build a tiny home or live in a camper trailer while you build your forever home, you're really going to have to go pretty rural and buy a few acres in an area that is totally unrestricted.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard to find.
Hard to find.
And then that brings up another problem in any kind of unrestricted area is
unrestricted. So it's unrestricted for everyone.
Yes. And so you need to do a drive-through and make sure that you like whatever your neighbor's property looks like, because you're going to have to drive by that every single day. And after you move in, you can't make them clean it up.
No.
It's unrestricted. Now, there are a few exceptions to that as far as health and safety concerns, but for the most part, if they want to have, every car they've ever owned in their front yard and they don't want to mow their grass, there's not a lot you can do about those kind of things. So you need to really research the area and make sure that you really do want unrestricted. And not that every area is bad. We shouldn't make it sound like that, but
no, it's not necessarily bad if the house is very messy or the yard is messy. That's just how people want to live.
Right. And that's their choice, and they chose unrestricted. So if you're choosing unrestricted, you have to accept that.
Hey, I have a bathtub in my front yard.
But you have things planted in it.
Well, no. I just need some big people to come up and pick it up. And
hey, I thought it was part of your gardening, or
not yet.
Not yet. It may become part of that. So there's a lot involved, and we are happy to help guide you through that process. But you also need to involve your contractor and make sure that you are able to do the project that you are wanting to do.
Yeah, and it's really important. Do your research. Check out the property before you ever think about buying it. You can do a lot of things online, like you can check the FEMA flood maps.
Yes, that's another question that we have a lot is, are there areas that flood? And not very many, but there are pieces of property that are all low-lying, so you couldn't really build in a certain area.
You want to be very cautious.
Yeah.
And you can, if you're looking at, say, Google Earth or some of the other apps out there at properties, if there are other homes around, it's probably okay to buy in that area. But people need to be able to read a topographical map that shows the elevation, because we do have some steep hills and things that, it's very inexpensive land, but it's, straight.
Yeah, you may buy 10 acres that you can't find a flat acre on. So,
or the top of the escarpment here, it's 1,000 feet well. to get water up there. So
Right.
there are some things, if the price seems too good to be true,
It probably is.
it probably is.
And that's the importance of calling a local agent who knows the area. And, we can go do a drive-by and put eyes on the property and see what we initially think about it. Now, there's still a lot more research to be done, but we can at least put some eyes on the property. So never go completely sight unseen when you're buying land on the Cumberland Plateau.
Yeah, absolutely. Or Eastern Tennessee, I
True.
would say.
True. Well, if you have more questions about buying land and building a home on it, please reach out to us. And if we can't answer your questions, we'll put you in touch with the professionals who can.
And if you like our videos, please subscribe and like them. And we look forward to seeing you soon.